You may have an exposed brick wall in your home and need to mount a TV, or you may own a commercial establishment with brick walls and need to mount TVs or artwork. Either way, if it's one thing everyone who has a brick wall has in common, aside from their love of the aesthetic, beautiful red bricks, it is the challenge of mounting things to the wall, particularly heavy items like large paintings, sturdy shelves, mirrors, and of course TVs. So how do you mount a TV on a brick wall? The process is fairly straightforward. You want to use a hammer drill, a sharp 3/16 inch masonry bit, and some 1/4 inch concrete screws to get the mount firmly attached to the red bricks so you can have a strong mount for your TV. Let's take a closer look at how it's done. Talked about putting a TV mount on concrete, drywall, plaster, and now we're going to do a brick wall. How to put a TV mount and mount your TV on a brick wall is not much different than the concrete TV mount installation, where we will use masonry bits and Tapcon masonry screws to drill holes in the brick and then to drive the screws through the mount into the brick so you'll have a nice strong TV mount on a brick wall. Your wall may not be exposed brick like this. You may have some kind of furring strips over the brick, something like drywall on the furring strips, or you may have plaster or even concrete over the brick wall. So you'll have something like about a 1/2 inch of plaster over it. You can tell that you have a brick wall if you're drilling and you see this red dust come out, then you know you have a brick wall. Of course, you might be drilling into the mortar, in which case you'll see gray dust just like concrete. But it's not much different than doing the concrete wall installation. You need to drill holes. In this case, I'm using a 1/4 inch Tapcon screw. So that means a 3/16 masonry bit to drill a hole into the brick, preferably the brick, not the mortar. So a little bit denser and stronger if you drill directly into the brick. And then I'll put this through the TV mount and then drive it through. Carefully, not to over tighten. If you have some kind of covering like plaster or concrete, you have to make sure you use a long enough screw. The longer, the better. In this case, I'm using a 2-inch screw. You want to account for the size. Like if you're using a 3/4 inch furring strip with a 1/2 inch, that's 1 1/4 inches. That's not going into the brick. You need at least 1 inch embedment into the brick for it to be strong. So that means at least a 2 1/4 inch Tapcon screw or larger. Same thing if you have plaster or concrete over, you have at least a 1/2 inch to account for. So in which case this 2 inch would be fine. So even though I'm doing this on an exposed brick wall, the process is the same if you have some kind of covering over it. You just have to account for that extra space. And speaking of spaces, if you have a drywall wall, you're going to have a space here, the size of the furring strip. So about a 3/4 inches of space. So you'll need to use spacers, drill through large enough to fit the spacer in, and then you would put this through the spacer. Make sure you're drilling into the brick deep enough, and then you'll put this through the spacer. Or you can use furring strip as a spacer itself if that's where you want to put the TV mount, in which case you'll have to drill large enough through the drywall and then through the wood, and then these threads are not going to be going through the wood at all. And then you have to drill deep enough into the red brick and get a long enough screw to get at least 1 inch into the red brick. That's the main point. But you can't just tighten that on the drywall if there's a space behind it. It won't be able to get tight enough. So you want to be able to tighten this all the way down, in which case you'll need a space between the mount and the brick wall. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be measuring, not quite measuring, but I'm going to be using a level. Make sure this is straight. And you might not always get all 3 in red brick. But then I'll mark each space and then I'll drill the holes. And then drive in the screws. After that, attaching the TV is easy. You just follow instructions. Usually requires putting some kind of bolt, some kind of bracket, the other parts of the mount on the TV, and then you hang the TV with the bolt sticking out. In this case, it's just a single bolt. But tools are going to be a level, mask, hearing protection, a marker, Tapcon or other brand concrete screws. If you're using the 1/4 inch, then it's a 3/16 masonry bit. And then I like to use a screwdriver for the final tightening, or you can use a ratchet wrench to make sure that you don't over tighten these. And of course you'll need a hammer drill. I'm going to be using this Milwaukee M12 hammer drill, driver, and regular drill combination. And you'll set this to hammer. After you drill in a small hole, set this to hammer. And then of course you can set the proper bit to drive the screws. After you've drilled deeper than the length of the screw, you can put a piece of tape to gauge the depth if you want. I usually just eyeball it. You'll want to blow out the dust. People always ask me what these are, these little tools I use. This is a plastic pipette. You can get them in bulk, and it's meant for water, but it will also get deep inside the hole to blow out the dust in the back of the hole. So as you can see, there you go. Or you can use a larger bottle. This was a little squeeze bottle. You can get these in bulk as well. Amazon, the hardware store, dollar store. And this is more force of air blowing into the hole that blows it all out. You can blow the outside. Blower brush also has a brush on it, which is not enough, but you can squeeze the inside. The problem is the dust and debris can make the screw bottom out, especially if you didn't drill it deep enough. For these 1/4 inch hex head screws, you use a 5/16 hex driver bit. You can use a power driver for the first part of it, and I usually like to tighten it by hand so I don't over tighten it. It's good practice to get all of the screws in first before you tighten them all the way down. And you can also make sure it's level like that. When you have the screws mostly tightened down, if you're worried about over tightening at the end, you can tighten the last bit with a ratchet wrench with a 5/16 bit at the end, or believe it or not, even a screwdriver. This nifty little one, you can put this in it. And there you go. Once the mount is up, then it's the easy part of just getting the bolt in the back of the TV, hanging it up. If it's a small one, you can just hang it up yourself, or have two people hang it up. They get an Allen wrench, and then you tighten it up. A lot of these also have, especially the telescoping ones, have a leveling function on the mount as well. So how strong is it? Well, it can hold up my weight. I'm about 170 pounds. My little luggage scale would kind of be redundant considering that this can hold up my weight. So over 100 pounds. After this, you have your TV on your wall.